Breaking news, the Sacramento Police Department facing serious questions tonight after it was just revealed that Stephon Clark, the unarmed black man killed by police, was shot 8 times, hit from both behind and on his side. That is according to a private family autopsy. The findings contradict police accounts of the deadly confrontation. Police video from the March 18th shooting shows police approaching Clark in his grandparents' backyard last week. Police had said they believed that he was armed and advancing towards them when they fatally shot him. Ryan Young is out front live from Sacramento for us. Ryan, what is the family saying about the results?
Well, Brianna, the family really speaking through their attorneys this afternoon, sort of laying out this case, trying to change the narrative. In fact, they said that several times. The fact that the 22-year-old father of 2 was charging toward officers is what Sacramento police have first said in the first few days. But the pathologist said that they believe he was actually shot here on the side. And they pointed to one of the shootings here, and then it turned his body. And after that happened, he was shot 6 more times in the back, once in the leg. We do know that officers fired some 20 shots altogether. They really believe that first shot impacted him and then twisted his body, which they believe now shows a difference in the conversation that was happening for the first few days. It goes on to say that any of those shots could have been a fatal shot to Stephon Clark, but then he probably sat there for 3 or 4 minutes because he died from all those compounding shots. Now, of course, this has been a charged community after that shooting. Several people taking to the streets, letting their voices be heard because they are upset about this shooting. What we did learn, though, is there'll be more protests, not only tonight, but over the next few days, because protesters really want to get their voice to be heard, to be out there. But this is definitely creating a different conversation. People in that room today, when this was said, we could hear people saying, murder, murder, murder. So we'll have to see what happens next. The Sacramento Police Department then going on to say today that this, of course, is still under investigation. They're not going to refute this line by line, but this investigation continues. Brianna?
Ryan Young, thank you for that report from Sacramento. Out front now, Mark Lamont Hill, who's a CNN political commentator, and Bill Stanton with us. He's a former NYPD officer. Mark, the details from the family's pathologist that Stephon Clark was shot 8 times, 6 times to his back. There was 1 time to his side, close to his back. There was 1 bullet to the thigh. Police had said that Clark advanced towards officers when they opened fire, but what does this tell you about that narrative?
Well, one, it contradicts and maybe even refutes that narrative that police offer. It also reminds us that this young man was in extraordinary pain. The medical experts say he may have been laying there 3 to 10 minutes in extraordinary, excruciating pain while this is happening. The one to his thigh suggests that he was hitting the ground when he was shot again. So all of these things really speak a very different story than one of some aggressive, crazy man running toward police, where police had to shoot for their lives, 20 to 30 rounds landing 8 times. So this really challenges that narrative. And this, lastly, is a very, very familiar story where whenever police are caught or at least investigated for excessive force or for a bad shoot, they always say this person was coming toward us, they were resisting, they were violent, they were running through bullets, like Darren Wilson said about Mike Brown and Ferguson. There are all these kinds of stories which rarely cohere with the facts and the evidence.
Bill, what do you think?
Well, I'm hearing a lot of rhetoric, no disrespect. We're talking about the Brown case in Ferguson, which the whole hands up, don't shoot narrative
Can we
was
actually,
done.
Bill, can we focus? No, let's not focus on
well,
that.
exactly. I didn't bring it up.
Okay,
Mark
I want to focus. I want to
okay.
focus on Stephon Clark and the results of this private autopsy.
Absolutely. So, what would you like? What would you like to address? You want to address the 20 shots? Do you want to address was he actually?
No, I want to ask
perpetrator?
you about how when you see this autopsy, and it is a private family autopsy, how do you square what these findings are with the narrative that the police had put out?
Well, what I'm listening to the narrative. I'm looking at the chopper footage. I'm looking at the body cam footage, and what I see is the police responding to a crime. I see them chasing an alleged perpetrator, and the perpetrator's not stopping. If the alleged perpetrator stopped and listened to the commands or figured out that there's a police overhead and stopped and froze without potentially putting his hands up. Now, I just put my hands up with my phone. With the adrenaline going in a dark atmosphere, you're in fear for your life. Now, we're going to see how this turns out, the logistics, the vector of the bullets. But right now, I have more questions than answers, to be quite honest.
There are a lot of questions, no doubt. I do want to ask you, Bill, police were responding to reports. When you talk about the adrenaline going and the state of mind of those officers, they were responding to reports of a man breaking car windows. Let's listen to the 911 call.
Hi, what's going on there?
Yeah, this guy's going down the street breaking windows of cars. He busted both my truck windows out, and he busted in the people's backyard right now, across the street from my place. He busted two of my windows out, and he broke the car's window out across the street from me.
So they're responding to someone breaking windows, and yet Stephon Clark was shot 8 times and very quickly after officers put eyes on him, even difficult to put eyes on him in those dark conditions. Does that, in your opinion, show that they went into this with maybe a disproportional level of heightened alert?
Absolutely not. Some of the most deadly encounters police have is responding to, arguments between husband and wife or spouses. A cop never knows what he's walking into. Sometimes the most routine calls could turn out deadly. Approximately 16 police officers have died this year alone being shot by guns. So cops are on alert, and at the end of the night, they want to go home. So you're chasing someone who is not stopping and who maybe spins around with a cell phone. Now, guess what? In the dark, with something in your hand.
Is there any evidence of that? I'm just curious. I'm just curious. Is there any evidence that he spun around with the cell phone, or are you just conjecturing?
I'm conjecturing. They're saying from the dash cam footage,
okay, well, let's not do that. Let's
Fair enough.
Well, then let's not.
Point.
Mark, I want to give you a chance to respond.
So let me jump in. Let me jump in for a few things. One, you said he could have figured out that these were police officers. Well, one way for him to know they were police officers would be for police officers to say, "Hey, we are police officers." They did not do that. So again, we're talking about responsibility here. You said police want to go home. So did he. That's why he was running to his house. He was in his backyard. If you identify yourself as a police officer, this may prevent that.
So he was running home from where? The gym? Where was he running home from?
Can I? You spoke for a really long time uninterrupted. Just allow me to make my arguments, and then you can respond.
Yes, sir.
So then, as they're running, it seems to me, and we see this in other cases, I won't mention specific cases, but there are many times where police have often said, hey, we don't just jump out and pull our weapons out. We duck. If we think someone has a weapon, we duck. We create cover for ourselves. They jumped out and immediately came toward him, again, escalating a situation. Again, the question isn't, could you think a cell phone in the dark is a gun? Sure, you could absolutely think that under certain circumstances. That's why you go through these procedures that police didn't seem to do. And finally, there seems to be a very long pattern and history, statistically, I'm not talking about individual cases, but statistically, of police officers thinking that particular alleged perpetrators have guns when they're actually cell phones or when they have nothing in their hands. We tend to think that black victims are more guilty than they are, that they're older than they are, that they're more aggressive than they are, and we have to factor that in too. I agree. I have no doubt that the police officers wanted to go home. I have no doubt that the police officers didn't go out that night saying, hey, let's go shoot and kill somebody. I think they really think he was armed and dangerous. The problem is it's an irrational, unnecessary expectation under many circumstances. That's my concern.
We'll have to leave it there, gentlemen. Bill Stanton, Mark Lamont Hill, thank you so much to both of you for that.